Hey, what's up, stinky gamers and people who are bad at math? My name is MathGod45, I think, and I'm here to teach you how to do some matrices shit. So today we're going to talk about row echelon form, okay? So row echelon form is basically the idea of taking a matrix and doing what is known as Gaussian elimination, okay? You don't care about all that. You're just a stupid idiot who wants to pass your college course and get on with your major, or maybe you're doing this in high school, middle school. I don't know what you're doing it in. The point is, you don't give a shit about what any of this means. You just want to know how to do it. So I'm here to show you. So I'm going to give you a matrix, okay? If you don't know about matrices, I'm not here to tell you about it, okay? I'm just here to show you how to do something. So if you don't know what this is, just click off the video. So here's a matrix, okay? So this is a symmetric matrix. You know, it doesn't have to be symmetric. And what I mean by symmetric is, you know, it's an n by n matrix. It's 3 by 3. This is a 3 by 3 matrix, and you know you can compute this pretty easily. But you can put other matrices in row echelon form. You can put a 50 by 69, a 420 by 69 top kek lol matrix into reduced echelon form or echelon form. Doesn't matter, okay? The point is, we're gonna convert this guy using Gaussian elimination, okay? So the first thing I would do is basically eliminate this guy right here and this guy right here, all right? Row echelon form dictates that we want these values to be 0 because we want to make a 0 triangle in the bottom left, okay? And we also want these values to be equal to 1. These are known as your pivots, okay? So let's just go by example here. Can you keep up? Are you keeping up, buddy? Okay, so first step here, draw a little arrow here. I want to remove this guy, all right? So what I want to do is I basically want to take one copy of row 1 and subtract it from row 2 to get a new row 2. What this is going to do is take this value, okay, this value, I'm circling it multiple times, and you're going to subtract, sorry, I meant 2 copies of this. Just forgive me, I'm retarded. So we're going to take 2 copies of row 1 and subtract it from row 2. What this is going to do is take 2 of the 4 up here, which equals 8, and subtract it from the 8, which is going to create a 0 in that position. That's exactly what we want. Remember earlier when I talked about that Illuminati triangle in the bottom right? We want that to all be zeros. So this is working out perfectly. So what we can see is our top row stays the same. Our bottom row stays the same. We didn't do anything with it. But we have to do it for the rest of the row because we're subtracting 2 copies of row 1 from row 2. So for the second one, we see there's a 6. We're going to take 2 copies of row 1 and subtract it from row 2. So you're going to have 6 plus 24, which is going to equal 30. And then the 16, you're going to subtract 2 copies of 8, which equals 16, which will make that a 0. Okay? Now we have this new brand spanking new matrix. Very hot, very sexy. I'm jizzing. Math just turns me on, you know? I'm one of those freaks. One of those genetic freaks who just loves math. Just sits all day in his stupid dorm room doing math. Basically a masochism. Alright, so here we go. Next step is we also want to make this guy a 0. Let's see. Row 3. Subtract 3 copies of row 1. And I'm going to put that back into row 3. So that means I'm subtracting 3 4s, which is a 12, from 12 to get a 0. So first row is going to stay the same. And the third row, we're going to subtract 3 copies of row 1. So this is going to be a 0. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 minus 12 is 0. Negative 12 times 3 is negative 36. So we're going to add 36 to 5 to get a 41. And then negative 1 minus 3 copies of 8 is minus 24. So we're going to have minus 25 here. Alright, so we have this new hot matrix. And as you can see, because you have great eyes, I know, you know, you're playing all those Fortnite shooters and the PUBGs and the Apex Legends and all that. You can see we're getting pretty close, right? Now we need to remove this guy. How do we remove this guy? Well, I'm going to show you this nifty trick. I actually did this on purpose, and I'm actually lying to you. I came up with a random matrix, and we're just going with it. But I'm going to pretend like I came up with this beforehand. So we can actually perform what are known as elementary row operations on any row at any time. So we have this row up here, and something you might notice is that you can actually divide all of those numbers by 4. They're all divisible by 4. So what we're actually going to do here, before we work on our 41 there, we're going to take row 1 and we're going to divide it by 4 to get a new row 1, which is going to give you the matrix 1, -3, 2, and we can actually continue to do that. So you can see in this row, we could actually just divide all those numbers by 30, and that would make the middle 30 a 1, right? We could just do row 2 divided by 30 equals a new row 2. That's going to get us the matrix 1, -3, 2, 0, 1, 0, 0, 41, -25. Don't worry about this, okay? There wasn't a brain in there anyway. Just to make you feel better, I'll draw a little brain in there. So he's like a zombie, you know? And the guts are pouring out. I don't know why it's so pink. I don't know why the brain is falling like liquid. So we have this new matrix, alright? We want to basically eliminate, and now I'm using pink because I'm gay. We want to eliminate this 41. Best way of doing that is using row 2 since there's a 1 there. So what I would do is actually row 2 minus 41 copies, 41 motherfucking copies of row 2, and I meant row 3. Row 3 minus 41 copies of row 2 will get us a new row 3. And what that'll do is basically create this as a 0. You know, we're subtracting 41 from 41, you get a 0. And when you subtract 41 copies of 0 up here for this -25, you know, it's just a 0. So you're just subtracting 0, which is just going to keep it the same. The only thing that we have to do is make sure that all of these pivot values are equal to 1. Right now, we have this big spanking gay-ass -25. We want to make that guy a 1. So what do you think you have to do? Well, it's pretty fucking easy, you idiot. You take row 3 and you divide that by -25 to get a new row 3. -25 divided by -25 is 1. Anything divided by itself is 1, okay? And now we've actually reached a peak orgasm moment. This is a peak orgasm math moment. We have reached this row echelon form. Now, if you were to put this in reduced row echelon form, you have to do a couple more steps to get to that point. Reduced row echelon form says that your whole matrix has to be mostly 1s and 0s unless you don't have a pivot. Okay, so let's say this was our matrix, and down here we had a 0. You could have numbers over here, right? But everywhere else has got to be 1s and 0s. You know, if it's a 1, then it would have to look like this. And in fact, this matrix right here, this row echelon form matrix, turns into this matrix on the right. And I can show you how to do that very quickly. So to get that matrix to that point, you basically want to do a couple more row operations, Gaussian elimination, if you will, to get to that point. So some values that we need to get rid of. We have 1s as our pivots, right? We need to get rid of any values that are above them. If these were 0s, we wouldn't have to get rid of anything above. But they're not. They're 1s. They're fucking 1s, so we need to get rid of the shit above. So to get rid of these values right here, right? Well, let's think about how we can do that. If you'll notice right here, this is a 0 value. So if we use row 2 as an operation, this guy won't be affected. It'll stay as a 1. So let's do that. Row 1 plus 3 of row 2 equals row 1. What this is going to do is take 3 copies of this guy and add it here, which is going to create a 0 value up there. And it's going to take 3 copies of these 0 values, which won't change the values above it. So our new matrix will be 1, 0, 2, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. And then all we need is one more operation to create a reduced row echelon form matrix. So our next operation is we want to basically do the same thing. We want to get rid of this 2 up here. Well, what's a way that we can do that? We can't really use the 0 here. That's not gonna work. We don't want to divide the row by 2. That wouldn't even work, so I don't know why the fuck I mentioned it. The only really thing we can do is take this one and use that value. So what we're gonna do is row 1 minus 2 copies of row 3 equals row 1. And that's basically gonna take 2 copies of this guy, subtract it from this guy to get a 0. And so your final matrix will look as follows. If you aren't blind, take a look at this. Very sexy, very hot. Tune in next time where I shoot myself.